Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
We have built, Greg, what I would call a unified commerce and payments platform that connects both merchants and non-merchant technology and other payment partners to a global marketplace. So we enable their international expansion strategy, we help them to optimize regionally, and we are providing them with the technology and the payment connections to fuel their growth across the world.
That was Lenny Crotty, the president of Metrics Global, and this is episode 39 of the Leaders in Payments podcast, and Lenny is our special guest this week. I'm your host, Greg Myers, and hey, before we get started, if you happen to office in Houston, Austin, or the North Texas area, check out Fuse Workspace, where their mission is to help others do more. Check them out at fuseworkspace.com. Okay, back to the show. Lenny was born in a small town in Ireland called Ennis, where the local airport has the claim to fame of having established the world's first airport duty-free store. Lenny was named president at Metrics Global at the end of August after spending the last 20 plus years in payments. Metrics Global is a global payments and fintech company that has been around for about 15 years. They are headquartered in Las Vegas and have built a unified commerce and payments platform that connects both merchants and technology and payments partners to a global marketplace. They support international multi-currency acquiring in about 170 countries and currencies and have local acquiring capabilities in 59 markets. Lenny has a passion for payments and fintech and a personal passion for self-development, wine, travel, reading, and running. We've got a great episode this week, so let's get started. Hi, Lenny. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast.
Thanks, Greg. It's good to be here. Let me start by saying congratulations on the success of the Leaders in Payments initiative, and thank you for giving me and Metrics Global the opportunity to participate. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, where you currently live, a few things like that.
Sure, no problem. So, as you may have already gathered from our previous conversations, I was born in Ireland, a small town in the Midwest called Ennis in County Clare. Today, it has a population of about 25,000 people, but obviously it was a lot smaller back then when I was growing up there. The closest airport that frequent flyers and travelers might know in Ireland to where I was born is Shannon Airport, where, interestingly enough, the world's first airport duty-free store was established decades and decades ago. So my small little hometown is famous to some degree. So after secondary school, I went straight into a local accountant's practice as a trainee accountant. And I did that for about 8 years before taking my first position in what I would call the real world as a director of finance at a local car dealership. So we sold Rover, Land Rover, and Fiat cars. And I have to tell you that working in the motor trade in the mid-1990s in Ireland was quite an education for me, I have to tell you. But as I say, it was my first real move into the real world, having worked in an accountant's practice for many years, and I learned a lot there. Interestingly, when I was working at that motor dealership, my girlfriend at the time worked in corporate recruitment, and she told me about an open position at a small enterprise software company in a nearby city called Limerick. And that company was looking to hire a pre-sales consultant to both demo their solution, and then after the sale was complete, I would also be responsible for actually implementing the software that I had sold. The name of that company was Software Architects International, and our solution portfolio was called Cashbook because it integrated into the financial modules of many of the large ERP systems of the time, and it solved challenges like electronic vendor payments, customer direct debits, and bank reconciliation, those core key accounting processes that finance departments need to do at the end of the month. And that was really, my first insight, if you like, into what was then offline B2B payments and other related payment activities and processes. So I left the world of accounting behind me and I took my first step into the world of enterprise software, global payments, treasury management, and ERP in joining that company. And I know you know this, Greg, but this was fintech long before the word fintech was ever a thing.
Right.
Yeah, so that was, back in 1997, and I've been in this space ever since. And that first role actually gave me the opportunity to literally travel the world. I was very blessed at the time to work for an organization that gave me the opportunity to go and sell and then implement software. And in that first 3-year period between 1997 and 2000, I traveled to about 30 countries. And by the year 2000, if I can just kind of fast forward a little bit, by the year 2000, our solutions were ready for launch in the United States. So our CEO in Ireland at the time hired a president who was going to run our North American business. And he lived in a place called Mill Valley, which you may or may not know is a small town just on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, or from San Francisco, I should say. And a couple of us who were living and working from the Irish headquarters were given the opportunity to relocate to the US to help build our business in North America. So I volunteered to relocate. So I arrived in San Francisco actually on Valentine's Day in the year 2000, interestingly enough. So I've been here now for over 20 years. And hopefully that kind of gives you a window into my first movement, if you like, into the world of payments.
Okay. Are you currently still in the San Francisco area?
Well, I'm actually in the process of physically relocating from San Francisco to suburban Las Vegas as part of me taking this new role as president of Metrics Global. We're headquartered here in Las Vegas, as you may know, and San Francisco is a beautiful place. I know I'm going to miss it. I like running to the bridge in the morning, the Golden Gate Bridge in the morning, and I've got some very, very fond memories and some great friends and business relationships in the San Francisco Bay Area. But the opportunity to take on this role as president of Metrics Global clearly was a role that I needed to relocate for. And so, as I say, I'm in the process of relocating and embracing the change from San Francisco to Las Vegas with an open mind and an open spirit.
Well, maybe instead of running to the Golden Gate Bridge, you can run to the casinos.
Well, that is definitely an option. I'm going to have to try and figure out how I do my running, though, in a way that's not going to expose me to 110-degree temperatures in the middle of the summertime. But these are first world problems, and I'm looking forward to getting settled here.
Great. Well, you mentioned Metrics Global, so let's talk about that. Tell the audience a little bit about what the company does.
Great. Well, look, delighted to do so. So I stepped into my role as president of Metrics Global on the 31st of August of this year. We are a global payments and fintech company, and we have a long-established record of solving problems for merchants worldwide. My CEO, whose name is Wendy Yurgo, she started the business literally from her kitchen table almost 15 years ago. So we're a well-established organization. We are, as you know, we're headquartered here in Las Vegas, and we have entities in Mexico City, in Dublin, and in Singapore. So in terms of what we do, so we have built, Greg, what I would call a unified commerce and payments platform that connects both merchants and non-merchant technology and other payment partners to a global marketplace. So we enable their international expansion strategy. We help them to optimize regionally, and we are providing them with the technology and the payment connections to fuel their growth across the world. So think of us as a one-stop shop, if you like, for not just payments acceptance, but we also provide a variety of other critical value-added services that, sit around the payment transaction itself. So in terms of our products and services, if I can just kind of get into the meat and potatoes of it. So we support international multi-currency acquiring in about 170 countries and currencies. We have local acquiring capability, I believe today, in 59 markets. And we also support 140 alternative or localized payment methods. So pretty robust solution. Beyond, the core payment capability itself, we also have best-in-class solutions for tokenization, fraud prevention, chargeback management, and I would say last but not least, we also have our own universal card account updater solution that's both processor and issuer agnostic. So there's a lot there underneath the hood. Our value proposition, if I can just talk about that for a second, our value proposition and our go-to-market strategy is very focused on a small number of very specific industry verticals. So we've built up over the course of the last 12 to 15 years significant expertise and competency in being able to serve the needs and the unique requirements of merchants and partners in those verticals. And, I should also say that even though I literally just joined the company in the last month or so, both Wendy, our CEO, and the company Metrics Global have been known to me for many years. And I truly believe that we are one of the best kept secrets in the global payments ecosystem. And, we're looking forward to building something truly compelling here in the ecosystem.
So are most of your merchants sort of mid-market and large companies?
Good question, Greg. So, like many payments companies, we have a reasonably diverse portfolio of merchants. So we have merchants all the way from smaller SMBs into the mid-market category and all the way up to and including very, very large global merchants who are doing business in dozens of markets and who are processing hundreds of millions of dollars a year through our platform. So a little bit of everything, to be candid.
Okay. And do you go to market through your own direct sales force, or do you work through other partners, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. Again, not unusual to some of the payments companies that are out there in the ecosystem. We've built our portfolio, our merchant portfolio, through, as you say, our own sales efforts and being deeply connected in the ecosystem and just going out and doing the good old-fashioned feet on the street sales engagement and bringing in our own business. But we have built up a very loyal community, I would say, of partners who, refer business to us, who have technical integrations into our platform or vice versa. And through those connections, merchants are being referred and being onboarded on an ongoing basis. So it's a little bit of everything. We're starting to put in place a more formalized structure around our sales and partnership go-to-market strategy as we move into 2021. And, that'll include some new things like hiring. We'll be a little bit more deliberate in terms of our partner strategy overall, but 12 to 15 years of a combination of different strategies, Greg. And, today we've got several hundred merchants in our portfolio.
Okay. And you mentioned that you focus on some specific verticals. Are there any that you want to mention?
Well, I'll mention a couple. We have a very strong competency in direct selling. We have dozens of merchants that fall into what I would call the retail physical goods industry vertical. And then we have merchants in SaaS and technology and a little bit of expertise in travel and hospitality. So a little bit of everything, but really our core focus is around retail physical goods, direct selling. Those are our two major industry verticals today.
Okay. And what would you say differentiates you guys from your competitors out there?
Well, great question, and I'm glad you asked, actually. So I'd like, if it's okay, to answer that question without necessarily talking about our products and services that we provide, and rather maybe focus on why merchants not only decide to work with us at the beginning of a relationship, but why those merchants have stayed tremendously loyal to us over the years. So as I think about our business and our merchants, many of whom who have been with us 5, 8, 10 years, really we've built this business, Greg, on 5 foundational pillars or core principles. And the first one is building deep trust and transparency with our merchants and partners. Now, this might sound like an obvious one, but I have found that all other things being equal, individuals and companies will more often than not make their decision to partner with you based on reasons unrelated to the features and benefits of your solutions, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So the personal connection runs, the personal connection element runs very, very deep. So I think that's first and foremost, deep trust and transparency is a huge part of what we believe differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. Secondly, being consistently reliable in everything that we do. So, we do what we say we're going to do, and our commitment to going the extra mile to add value for our merchants and partners. And, being reliable isn't just about being reliable when you feel like it. It's about being reliable each and every day. And that's something that's one of our core values. Number 3, maintaining an extremely high commitment to the quality of our service. So we've built our business and our reputation actually on providing a quote unquote white glove service to our clients over the years. And this is something that's central to our values and to our day-to-day work ethic. Number 4, and this is an interesting one in some ways, this is fostering what I call real partnership with our clients and our merchants. So if you think about real partnership, that takes hard work, right? It takes having a commitment to a win-win philosophy on both sides. And in many cases, it means, you have tough and candid conversations in the spirit of creating breakthroughs and taking our relationships to the next level. And I have found personally over the years that merchants and partners appreciate candor, and it actually strengthens the relationship in the long run. And lastly, I've got one more. So our fifth core principle, if you like, is, and this is at the heart of what drives us, and it's a genuine desire to ignite real business transformation in the payments and the operations departments of merchants who are doing business across the world. So there's a deep personal satisfaction in seeing how both your technology and your solutions on a macro level can open up new regions or markets or expand consumer demographics for companies who are expanding across the world, or on a micro level where we can help ease the operational day-to-day burden on an individual who's doing a core accounting function in a finance department or someone who is managing or monitoring fraud. So, those are the core principles that guide us on a daily, weekly basis, and they're core to what we do, and we're going to continue to lean into them as we grow our business.
Great. No, that's a great explanation. I appreciate that. Let's talk about the payments industry at a broader level. Where do you think the industry's headed, say, in the next 2 to 3 years?
Sure. Okay, well, I would say these are perhaps obvious observations to make, Greg, but I'd answer your question from a couple of different perspectives. Firstly, we all know how, quote unquote, hot payments and fintech continues to be. And if you look at the amount of money that's being invested into the ecosystem, you're going to see a lot of new, freshly minted unicorns pop up all over the place over the course of the next couple of years. Some of the more established companies, ones that I would categorize as mature startups, they're continuing to raise so much money that many of them now are being valued at 3 billion, 5 billion. Some of them are heading towards 10 billion. So consolidation in M&A is going to continue. If you look at the large global processors and acquirers and PSPs, they don't have the bandwidth, and in many cases, they don't have the energy to build out competitive solutions that solve major merchant needs in either certain regions of the world or where different business models are not only popular, but are actually preferred by global merchants. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. So rather than build it themselves or partner with other companies, these large global processors and acquirers and PSPs, they're going to acquire technology. They're going to continue to acquire technology and platforms to give them either the geographical reach that they need, or it'll enable them to fill a gap where they don't have a solution for a specific region or a business model, so that they've got some kind of a competitive differentiation in the marketplace. One example based on my experience that's maybe worth pointing out is the whole area of payment facilitation, payment facilitators, aggregators, which I believe, Greg, you've got some experience in that field. And companies that are in the payment facilitation space, they're doing a lot of heavy lifting in very challenging corners of the planet where there's a lot of regulatory and compliance and legal complexity. So I see a continued movement into those types of business models, and where some of the larger global players are going to start investing heavily in buying companies in not just that space, but in related parts of the ecosystem. Another part of the ecosystem that has seen huge growth and energy in the last couple of years, which I think will continue into the foreseeable future, is cross-border payments. So if you think about companies like TransferWise or Neum, who were formerly called Instarem, and others, those companies are blazing a trail in the whole area of cross-border payments, and they're building the last mile to the cross-border payment rails ecosystem. So that's very hot at the moment. Over the longer term, I think the trend is obviously focused on the continued growth of the digital economy and digital commerce in general. If you think about our experience with COVID over the course of the last 6 or 7 months, one of the many lessons from COVID is that we've seen a huge acceleration in both SMBs and large traditional brick and mortar businesses implementing e-commerce and other digitally centered sales channels in a very deliberate and strategic way. And we've seen hundreds of thousands of businesses, perhaps millions of businesses actually, who during COVID, they had no ability to generate any revenue at all because they didn't have a digital strategy or even an omni-channel sales strategy. So I think the lessons of COVID will ripple through the ecosystem for years to come, in a positive way, I should say. And in fact, the future of e-commerce and online payments in general is very bright, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, I read recently or heard recently, I don't remember which, but companies saying their digital transformation plan was laid out for 5 years and they had to accomplish it in 6 months.
Yeah, I think that underscores the reality of many organizations at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you. Let's talk about your journey, how you got there. You already talked a little bit about your background and some of your first jobs, but what was your background and how did you get to the role of president there?
So I'm sure that many people actually listening to this podcast will relate to the fact that almost nobody starts out in their professional life with a preconceived plan to quote unquote work in payments. So like many people, I fell into payments completely by accident. And to be honest with you, I've loved every minute of the journey over the course of the last 23, 24 years. So as I said earlier, I stepped into this role as president of Metrics Global on the 31st of August. And this is the first time that I've held a role this senior in my career. So, the role of president is new to me. That said, my background and my career in global payments and in enterprise software and in sales leadership and revenue growth over the last 20 plus years, I think has naturally led me to this point. I've almost done everything in the payment space that you can think of, and I've worked with some great companies over the year, many of them who are global leaders in the payment space. So after I left my last company, an organization called eBanks, this summer, what I didn't want to do, Greg, was I didn't want to just continue doing something similar with a different company. That's no disrespect to all the great payment companies out there. So really, as I looked at my own career aspirations and what I wanted to do next in my career, it was time for me to step up and to put to work all that I've learned over the years, knowing, of course, that I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. But really, it was time to step up and take all of that experience and bring it into Metrics Global and to lead this company into and through the next stages of our growth and evolution as an organization as we look 3, 4, 5 years into the future.
Great, great. So what's something you're passionate about? Maybe pick one work-related thing and one not work-related thing.
Well, that's a very interesting question. I'm passionate about several things, but I'll try and keep the focus narrow here. So first and foremost, payments and fintech in general is a fascinating space to be in. It's just unbelievable to see the scope and the speed of innovation and revolution that's going on in the ecosystem. I think in our industry, the challenges as well as the opportunities are endless. As I think about my new role here at Metrics, I'm a firm believer in the old saying of don't ask what I'm getting here, but rather ask what am I becoming here. So that in many ways is my philosophy as an individual. So, as I think about what I'm trying to accomplish at Metrics, obviously I'm focused on growing and advancing the business over the course of the next few years, but I'm also in my role, I'm looking to see how in doing that, I will continue to grow as a person, where I can bring my skill sets to the organization, lead a high performing team. And at my core, I'm a sales guy. So I love the energy of being around people and spending time with customers and partners. So payments and fintech, obviously, I've got a passion for that. Anyone that has worked with me or has known me over the years will tell you that I am a very passionate believer in trying hard every day to be the best version of myself that I can be, whether that be in my professional life or in my personal life. So I've invested heavily and continue to invest heavily in personal development and self-mastery. Those things are different for different people. That's a very important part of my life and has been for about 20 years. So, I believe that if you invest in yourself, whether that be training or coaching or reading or self-development or positive disciplines or routines in your life, those things will exponentially pay back over time. So it's very important for me to be leading a company whose products and services, whose mission and operating principles are aligned with my own personal values and career aspirations. So that's career related passions, if you like. A couple of others real quick. I love to travel. I've been blessed to have visited more than 60 countries on all continents over the course of the last 25 years. The world is such an awesome, beautiful place, and travel is just, if you get the opportunity to travel to meet customers or partners and spend time with customers and partners in different countries to understand their culture and how they do what they do on a daily basis, that's a tremendous opportunity, and I've been very blessed to have been able to travel. I also spent a few years in the wine business, kind of randomly. So wine is also a passion of mine. And in my downtime, I love to read. I run quite a bit, as we talked a little bit earlier on, and I'm a huge sports fan. So, I like to keep busy when I'm not at the office.
So when was the last time you were able to travel internationally?
Great question, actually. I think the last trip I took internationally was to Ireland for New Year's Eve last year. So really before the magnitude of and the impact of COVID came a reality, I look to go back to Ireland at least once a year to see my mother, see my family and my friends. So it was last New Year's. And obviously, we had some plans this year to travel internationally, my fiance and I, but COVID dictated that wouldn't happen. But that's okay. That's okay. And, I look forward to getting back on the road next year, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so. Sooner the better, right?
Exactly.
Great. Well, I like to ask this question, especially people that have been in this industry for a while. I'm similar to you. I started in this industry 15 years ago and sort of just fell into the industry. It wasn't like I was looking to get into payments. I don't think anyone was at that time. But since then, right, there's been tons of investment in this space. It's sort of the hot, sexy space to be in. We've got the term fintech now that everybody loves. You can get a degree in this. You can take college courses. I mean, none of that existed back then. So the question is, someone coming out of college today that's interested in working in payments or fintech, as someone who's been in this industry for a while, what advice would you give them, to help them be successful in this industry?
Well, I'm going to answer that question from the perspective of a younger person who's an entrepreneur or a young leader of some kind who's looking to get into fintech and maybe starting their own company or taking a leadership position in a new startup or something like that. So, as somebody who spent over 20 years in the payment space and worked for a variety of phenomenal companies, I think this one for me is easy. So again, from the perspective, Greg, of young entrepreneurs and young leaders, I would say the answer really is one word, and that is focus, right? So as you're trying to build a business, grow a business, try to resist trying to be all things to all people, right? So as you craft your value proposition, as you craft your go-to-market strategy, I think it's very, very important to go narrow and deep in a small number of industry verticals or business models that you are committed to supporting. And I think the reasons why are perhaps obvious, right? So I think you got to say no a lot, which can be a challenge, especially for a young entrepreneur or a young tech startup CEO who's looking to build and grow a business, where in doing so, you want to try and win business from everywhere, but in doing so, you try to be all things to all people. I think saying no a lot can be difficult, but I think it's super, super important. If you think about what Steve Jobs said famously many years ago, a company's success is determined as much by what they don't do as much as by what they actually do. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. Jim Collins famously also said that in his book, I think Good to Great, that if a company has got any more than 3 priorities, they don't have any. So I believe passionately in that philosophy. As a young entrepreneur, as a young tech CEO, as you're starting to build a payments company or a fintech company, focus, focus, focus.
Yep, I think that's great advice for sure. Well, we've covered a lot today so far around the company and the industry as a whole and you and your role there. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so, Greg. I just want to, again, just say thank you for the opportunity. And payments is a small world. It's a big world, but it's a small world. And, you're never really more than 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from somebody else in the payments ecosystem. So I'm glad we got the opportunity to connect and to meet, and good luck with the rest of the initiative.
No, I appreciate that very much. And I know your time is very valuable, so I want to be respectful of that. So thank you so much for being here, taking the time out of your day to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Cheers.
And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.